Hi, I'm Erin Price, Program Manager at Food Recovery Network, and I'm thrilled to be here with Noel Davison, U.S. Digital Communication Specialist at Tony's Chocolonely, a chocolate company that's on a mission to ensure that chocolate is 100% exploitation free, and not just for their company, but worldwide. So before we dive in, I just want to mention that this is a recorded conversation as part of a series that we're developing for FRN students and alumni to help provide career advice. So whether you're a recent graduate looking to land your first job or someone who is seeking to change jobs or forge a new career path, we hope that these conversations offer practical takeaways and advice, or maybe even introduce new ideas or ways of thinking about a job in your career that can help you on your journey. So now, circling back to my incredible guest, Noel, thank you so much for being here. I would love to start our conversation by having you tell us a little bit more about your career path and what led you to working at Tony's Chocolonely.
Hey Erin, thanks so much for the lovely introduction. It's absolutely my pleasure to be here. Thank you all for having me. And it would absolutely be my pleasure to tell you a little bit more about how I got to Tony's. I'm going to start way back with I think I had kind of an unconventional pathway to where I am now, in that I've known for a very long time exactly what I wanted to do. And I know that is not the norm. So even back in high school, I think my freshman year, I was really drawn to marketing. And of course, now I'm a digital communication specialist sitting in the marketing team at Tony's Chocolonely. But back then, I was drawn to marketing because I have this analytical side of my brain, which just loves to look at numbers and the stories that they're telling. And there's another side of my brain that just can't stop coming up with ideas and gets really excited when there's one I want to pursue. And marketing felt like the perfect role that can blend the two worlds together. And I remember telling my family members, and specifically my grandpa, who happened to be a business teacher back in his day, that this was my intended career path. I think this is what I want to major in. And he asked me a question along the lines of, well, are you okay selling your soul? Because you're working for the man, you're working for these big companies, and marketing folks are just spin doctors at the end of the day. And I really stuck to my guns back then. I didn't know how, but I was certain that I wasn't going to be that person. I was going to make the world a better place, and I was going to do it through my role as a marketer. This is way before I even knew about B Corps, which we'll get into a little bit later, I believe. But I just knew that that didn't need to be the case. So flash forward a couple of years later, I'm going to college at Western Washington University in Washington State. And one of my little pod markets in my building that sells all these snacks happened to have this ginormous chocolate bar, which was exactly what I was craving when I was stressing over an exam. And lo and behold, that happened to be a Tony's Chocolonely bar. I started by falling in love with our chocolate because it is the most delicious Belgian chocolate ever, and the bars are ginormous. But then after college, I happened to have a mentor who knew about this great company to work for. And although I was no longer looking for internships at that point, having completed 3 already, she really insisted that I had to apply for an internship at this place because they had all these great benefits. They were on an awesome mission. And wouldn't you know it, that was Tony's Chocolonely back in our days when we were headquartered in Portland, Oregon. I was lucky enough to talk to our head of marketing at the time, and we just really connected, had so many of similar thought patterns and ideas. And I was lucky enough to be brought onto the team. From there, I was lucky enough to be hired full-time from that initial marketing internship into a role as a digital marketing assistant. I really found my pathway when I was just looking at Google Analytics data for our website, and I said, oh my gosh, I already have so many ideas of what we can do here to make this better. And she said, this is exactly what we need, is someone to come in and tell us what we need to do to bring ideas to the table and be able to execute on them. So that's how I ended up at Tony's Chocolonely. That was 4 years ago that I started as an intern. So I've been here for a good and long while now. Which, as I mentioned, is also a little bit unconventional. I feel like there are a lot of people these days who like to keep their careers moving and fresh and go somewhere new. And I'm one of the few people I know that's been somewhere for so long, but this workplace with its wonderful mission and with my incredible coworkers has just been such a great place for me. And I feel very lucky to have grown my career here.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Noel, for sharing all of that. And I just want to say, like, that's a little bit of proof that taking an internship can lead to a full-time job. Sometimes I know
Yes.
it doesn't feel that way, and sometimes it doesn't always work out, and that's okay too. Every experience is valuable. You learn something, you gain new skills. So I'm happy that it worked out for you, and it sounds like you made some really wonderful connections at the company. And I also think it's so interesting that you mentioned, that through your work, you still feel like you're able to contribute to this broader mission for Tony's Chocolonely. So I'm curious, like, what does a typical day look like for you in your role that you have now? And how does your role really contribute to that mission?
I love that question. First of all, I think I have the best job on the planet because mostly what I'm doing is just talking about chocolate all day online with people who are very excited about chocolate. Uh,
Sounds like a great gig.
yeah, I really can't complain. So in a normal day, I'm setting up our social posts and looking at our content calendar, making sure that I'm coming up with fresh new ideas for what we should be putting out there, whether it's a silly joke following some kind of social trend or something more serious, talking about contemporary issues that we're facing either here in the US in our own backyard or abroad in West Africa, where we see most of the problems cropping up in the cocoa industry. I'm also working on things like our newsletter, our website. I'm writing press releases. Sometimes it's little Choco Buddy jokes. We have these drawings of our chocolate bars with arms and legs, and we pretend they're little people that say snarky things sometimes. So wearing a lot of hats over here at Tony's, but part of that means having some deep impact knowledge. Over here on the communication side, we're the ones that are answering tough questions from our chocolate fans who are very knowledgeable about, hey, I know that exploitation, child labor happens in the cocoa industry, and I want to feel good about what y'all are saying, because quite honestly, at the end of the day, you can talk the talk, but you have to walk the walk too. Luckily, we're a company that also walks the walk. That does mean that you need something of a PhD in chocolate impact knowledge to answer all of the tough questions that we get on a daily basis, from what does a cocoa farmer actually earn in the cocoa industry, which I can name right off the top of my head, or what are the premiums that you pay, or how do you actually go about reducing cases of child labor on cocoa farms in West Africa? So even though I'm not the person sitting on our impact team and working directly with the farmers to find these solutions, I get to be part of our growth as a company. I get to be connected to the impact work we do through the knowledge that I share with our Choco fans. And I love the saying that our CEO has. He says, for our company to be able to accomplish our mission of ending exploitation in the entire cocoa industry, not just for ourselves, we need to have the best people on board. And we're talking about every single role filled with someone who is just spectacular. So whether that's communication specialists like myself sitting on the marketing team, whether that's our accountants, whether that's our office managers, everyone has to be giving their 110% and be talented and good at what they do in order to make something that is totally abnormal right now, which is trying to do business better, and change that into being the norm. It's not easy, it's an uphill battle. And so we need the best people to help get us there. And I love the way that that can connect to work in general and how we approach being impact makers out in the world, no matter what your career path is. Whether you're a marketer like me, if you're in finance, if you're in chemistry, there's always something you can do in order to help make the world a sweeter place.
I love that. Oh my goodness. And something that you mentioned kind of struck me. There's so much technical knowledge involved with the work that you're doing, but I know your background was primarily just in marketing more broadly. So I was just curious, did you happen to have like any background knowledge when you started your internship and then got into this position that you're in now at Tony's about all of these issues, or were you kind of learning as you went along with the job?
No, it's so funny. I was learning as I went along with the job. Something I love that we do is we have our mission printed on the inside of our wrappers. So anytime you pick up one of our big chunky chocolate bars, you can learn about what's happening. Unfortunately, when I was stressed about a test and eating that chocolate bar, reading another piece of material was the last thing on my mind. So
Sure.
funny enough, I had no idea about the mission until I was going through the application process with Tony's, and of course, only fell more in love with the company because of that.
Yeah.
But all of the learning that I did was on the job. We say compared to a lot of companies, we actually have a very long onboarding time just because there's so much to learn. We do literally a week's course of programming that's just centered around learning about Tony's as a company and what we do. So when you start 5 days, your first week is really truly taken up by learning about our mission and what we're here to do.
That's amazing. Honestly, I mean, one thing that that kind of brings up for me, just since we're talking about careers and all that, is you don't need to be an expert in a particular subject matter in order to be good at a job. I think, different skills can transfer from place to place, from role to role. So I think that that is inspiring for, potential job seekers right now, and kind of validating, like, you don't have to know all about this one issue in order to work somewhere if you have the skills that actually fulfill that job criteria. So
No,
that's great.
100%. And I think we're moving more in that direction. Something I love, this is totally off topic from what I do, but that I see other B Corps do is open hiring. And that means they're looking more at the candidate in front of them and not at their resume. So even if you don't necessarily have experience in a particular field, or like you were saying, specific knowledge, it's about the skills that you can bring to the table and more holistic view of the person that you are. For example, even at Tony's, we have multiple people on the team who started their careers as elementary school teachers.
Oh
Who
my God.
that would lead to a career in sales, for example, but it did. So no matter where you're at, it doesn't preclude you from moving into something that inspires you more. In fact, there's probably more flexibility than you might even be imagining out there.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love that. Well, and something else that, is you've already mentioned a little bit unusual per se. I mean, not necessarily, but for some people, you started as an intern and then you continued to stay with the company. And even in hearing you talk about, your job now, it just sounds like you're so invested and just really enjoy the company itself. And to me, that speaks volumes about how Tony's operates internally and what the culture must be like to work there. I mean, you mentioned this extensive onboarding process where they really want to help ensure that everyone feels prepared when they're coming onto the team. So I would love to hear a little bit more about, factors that make Tony's a great place to work. And I know you've also mentioned that Tony's Chocolonely is a B Corp. So if you can explain to us what that really means and why this is a great place to work, that would be great.
Yeah, I would love to. I love bragging on Tony's. So let me actually start with what a B Corp is, because I feel like that's going to factor into my answer a little bit here.
Perfect.
So B Corp stands for Benefit Corporation. And it's a certification that businesses can choose to get that says, hey, we're really out here to do good in the world. It's about socially responsible businesses that aren't just reporting on a duty to shareholders and in making a profit, but also into doing better for, people and the planet. It's a really cool movement. If you're interested, you should definitely look into B corporations. But there are thousands and thousands of us out there today. It doesn't matter if you're an insurance company, a chocolate company, anyone can be a B Corp, but a couple of notable examples are Patagonia and Ben and Jerry's. When you think of them, you're not just thinking of like these awesome fleeces that you can wear or an incredibly tasty tub of ice cream. You're also thinking about the good that they're doing in the world and how you get to be a part of that when you're indulging in your incredibly soft fleece or your incredibly tasty tub of ice cream. So Tony's Chocolonely is also a B Corp, and that really speaks to our heart as a company. And it's not just about our mission to end exploitation in the chocolate industry, but it also factors into how we treat the human beings within our company. The first example of that, us being a Dutch-based European company, we also very focused on well-being. So one of the flashiest examples of things we do for employees is everyone has a minimum of 28 vacation days per year. And actually, we have unlimited paid vacation days. So as long as you're being responsible, speaking with your manager, you can take as much time off as you would like to. Obviously, we're all very responsible about that. And actually, very few of us use more than the 28, but still, it's a really great example of how we factor well-being into our culture here. The other part of that is we have what we call a flat structure. We're not hierarchical. So there's no rigid structure of, because this person reports to the next person, that person up there is more respected than you. It's not that their voice is heard more than you. Everyone has a say and can speak up and be part of the things that they're interested in. So for example, even when I was an intern, I could ask to sit in on some really high level marketing meetings, and I would be completely welcomed there just out of sheer curiosity to know what's happening in those rooms. And it was completely comfortable and okay. And even as a very junior person, I was feeding back into very large, important global campaigns because that's the kind of culture we have where every voice is valued. That's been one of the most exciting and rewarding things, honestly, in my career, is that even being very young and junior, I've been able to contribute in some really exciting ways. Most recently, in a little bit of a rebranding that we've been working on, which for companies is a huge deal. And often you don't see junior members of a team working on that. Within our, oh, sorry.
Oh, no, I was just commenting. That sounds so amazing and incredible, but please continue.
It really is. It's so energizing, and we get into the work not to be doing, everything that's okay. Well, I'm just going to make this data entry today. And that's not exciting and energizing, right? It's doing the work where you can say, wow, I'm so proud that I was a part of that. Yeah. And it's cool not to be limited by the things that traditional structures would prohibit you from. The other thing that I really appreciate about Tony's is that definitely trickles down into the way that people management happens. One of the big benefits of being somewhere for so long, like I have, or as I consider so long, is that you can help your career path by really working with someone who you consider not only as a manager, not only as a boss, but as a mentor. And they can help shape and mold you into the kind of professional that you want to become. Having that longer term working relationship can absolutely help you in terms of, my manager completely understands my goals. She's helping me guide my career path. For example, in the world of digital marketing, it's really easy to be pigeonholed into something like just social media. And she knew from the get, that's not something I wanted to do, although it's something I can do and can do very well. It's not something I want to leave my entire career in. And she saw an opportunity for me and she said, you know what, really, I think you're a comms girl. I think you have this skill set, and I think that'll be more rewarding for you long term because it opens more possibilities. And so that's where my career has gone since. On top of that, she's helped put me forward for all kinds of opportunities internally within the company for projects and ideas and pitches that I wouldn't have had the opportunities for if we didn't have that kind of trusting bond and relationship between us, where she wants to see me excel. And so she's putting me into places and placing bets on me, and I'm proving myself to her consistently. So I think that's one of the huge benefits of working somewhere like this is you can build a really genuine connection beyond just boss employee and more like mentor mentee.
I love that. No, that's amazing. And I think, sometimes it's not even about like the company so much as it is about the people that you work with and feeling supported in that way. I think that's amazing. And I also just feel like, in hearing you talk about your job now, it's almost like this concept of like companies and jobs that might not be the obvious choice that can provide you with an opportunity to engage on important issues that you care about. They exist, they're out there. So you don't have to pigeonhole yourself into working in one space over another because you think this is the place where I'm going to be able to have the most impact, on X topic that I really care about. Especially for our network, I mentioned that because I know so many folks are excited about working with organizations and companies that are focused on, mitigating food waste, fighting hunger, fighting climate change. And there's actually a lot of opportunity to engage on those issues in maybe some non-traditional roles. So for example, you're in communications and marketing. I don't know that people would make that obvious leap to be like, oh, I can work on sustainability related topics, or, intersectional issues by doing this for a company. So I just wanted to kind of build that into the conversation as well. That's kind of struck me as something that was really interesting about your career path in general. But yeah.
I love that you mentioned that, because that's something I'm so passionate about too, is, sometimes you're partway through a degree program and you realize, wow, actually, I would have really rather done that. Or, oh man, I wonder how I can achieve my goals as like a human being and showing up in the way that I want in the world with the career path that I've chosen. And like we touched on earlier, there's flexibility and you can use your degree for something different. But even if, let's say, you have a career or a degree in chemistry and you say, hey, I want to know how to use this. I didn't go do environmental science, but I'd love to help the way that we show up on this planet. You can absolutely apply your degree, your specialty, your skills, your expertise to a role that might not out the gate seem like the most traditional pathway to contributing in those ways. Like you said, some organization that reduces food waste, but maybe you're helping making the environmental practices of a perfume company a little bit more environmentally friendly, right? So there are a lot of ways that you can contribute. And I think at Tony's, I see a lot of examples of this in terms of it's hard to get the ideal job right out the door, right? Because we all want to be contributing to these incredible companies. Like, is it not anyone's job or anyone's ideal job to work at like a Ben and Jerry's and have tasty ice cream all the time and be working on incredible impact campaigns? Like, no, I mean, that sounds wonderful. And I'm sure we would all love to work in a place like that. That's inspiring and fun. But it's really hard these days to get into the exact right job at the exact right moment. Me, I feel like I got really lucky in where I ended up and how I ended up there. But that's not always the case. So sometimes it's also about building out your skill set and sharpening the tools that are already in your tool belt and then taking them somewhere where you can use that to amplify their impact. For example, at Tony's, we even have some people working for us that used to work for who we call the big chocolate companies, who are usually the ones that are engaged with cocoa farms where there is instances of child labor, for example, or exploitation. But now that they're bringing their skills here, it's such a benefit to us to say like, hey, I've seen how it works at a really big, really successful company financially, and I know how to bring that here and make you guys even better. So maybe it's not the ideal job right out the door. Maybe it's not the most inspiring thing, but wherever you end up, you can be sharpening your tools and bring that to somewhere that is more your end game.
Amazing. Oh my goodness, Noel. I feel like we've just been naturally sharing some tips and thoughts for job seekers on the fly, like throughout our conversation. But I feel like now is kind of a good point for us to transition, just so I can give you some space specifically to share any additional pieces of career advice that you might want to offer for either current students or recent grads or alumni in our network. So I open the floor to you.
Thank you for leaving me this open opportunity. Something I'd love to talk about is, so I was a first generation college student. My parents didn't do the whole college thing. So they didn't have a lot of advice for me in terms of how to even apply to college, how to get your first job out of college. And I felt so lost in that process. And again, feel so lucky to end up where I did, how I did. But it was a really mystifying journey along the way. And so something I love to share is no matter how you're going about it, it's not wrong. Something I did that I think was super helpful for me is learning it's totally okay to reach out to someone who has the job you think you want. Say, can I buy you a coffee and just talk about your career and one-on-one ask them tips? For example, for me going into marketing, I had no idea what kind of jobs to research. Back then, I could be searching digital communication specialist, for example, which, as I did not know at the time, was not an entry-level role. But now I know that, now that I've been in the career, and that's an advice I could give to someone who happens to be in my career field. So asking the questions of someone who knows is totally okay. And often people are totally down to help, especially if they're working at some kind of impact company already. Another is just getting out there, playing around, searching on LinkedIn, like putting things into that search bar, maybe reverse searching. You could Google, Abigail Noel Davison, my full name, go back and see exactly, oh, so she started as an intern. I can do that too. Or seeing what my first title was once I was a full-time employee at the company. And then using your network. Even if you don't think you have one, believe me, you do. For example, when I was fresh out of college, I was reaching out to people like, man, who do I know? Oh, there was a judge at this case study competition that I did that I had a really great rapport with, and he happened to work at Microsoft. I'm going to grab him for a coffee and see if he knows anyone that's looking for someone that's a fresh job seeker, for example. So there are a lot of really practical ways that you can get out and into the career that you want. And then just managing relationships with the people that you never know where they're going to end up. And something I've learned through our director of partnerships here is you want to manage those relationships, because then you can go and have the most wonderful collaborative partnership with, oh, okay, so now we're going to make Tony is an integral part for hikers because we have this great relationship with Gregory backpacks, for example. And you can always grow your careers together. And something that I see is really important for all of us moving forward is to focus on community and how we can all help one another out. It's kind of part of the B Corp approach, right? Is even in your own life, even as an individual, how can you make that positive impact on the world, help others come along with you on that journey, and have that work reciprocally.
No, that's amazing advice. And honestly, I think, putting yourself out there can sometimes feel really scary, especially when you're like, oh, I'm just going to reach out to this random person on LinkedIn. But I almost feel like people now expect that kind of outreach to come, especially folks that are a little bit more tenured in their careers. And I almost think that that's like a flattering thing to have someone approach you and say, like, I think I might want a job like yours someday. Like, do you mind giving me a little bit of your time? And I think more often than not, people are really willing to help support and uplift other people who are seeking jobs in a similar field. So I love that you were bold and you went after what you wanted and you reached out to people unapologetically and just said, this is how I need to do it, and I'm going to do what it takes to help get myself to that next step. That's really special. And I think it's great advice for people, especially, for folks that might not have the same resources as others to, get their foot in the door. There's a very level playing field to get started by just going on LinkedIn and saying, hey, would love to have like a virtual chat with you sometime to learn more about your job and how you got there. So thank you so much for sharing all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. My pleasure.
And I'm also kind of curious, because you mentioned like before earlier in our conversation, things about resume building. I'm kind of curious, do you have any practical advice for folks that are seeking a job? Like, where do you search for roles, or, how can you improve your resume, or where do you search for jobs online, like that sort of thing? What's the importance of a LinkedIn profile, really? It's okay if you don't have anything to mention, but I just thought I'd ask.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I think the answer is it's a little bit of a moving goalpost, right? Like things are constantly changing. I do think LinkedIn is an important place to be. For example, it's something that we look at even when we're looking for interns. We'll pull up their little LinkedIn profile, see if there's anything we didn't catch on their resume there, anything of interest. Maybe they know somebody who knows us, for example.
Yeah.
Way to connect. And again, like I said, managing those relationships, even just with your peers and paying attention to where they're going. But if we're being honest, even LinkedIn is still predominantly a very white space. And when we're talking about diversity and inclusion, which is really important to a company like Tony's, that's not always the most comfortable space for everybody to be in. And so we also pay attention to other job boards. So wherever you can find a space that is comfortable for you, be there. There are job boards that are totally led by women, for example, and maybe you want to find like a really female power, female led company. And that's a great place to do it because there will be companies posting their jobs there, and there will be other peers that you can learn from about their careers there. The other thing is paying attention to companies' social medias, especially if you have like a total job crush on them. Again, working in
a job crush.
yeah. I mean, like I could read off the list of places that I'm just obsessed with. And I'm sure like probably people listening, you have at least one or two in mind too. And if they have a social media presence, often for entry level roles, I know this because I work in social media, you'll find that they're posting those jobs on their social medias as well. We're coming up and we're going to announce an entry level role at our company pretty soon. And that's something that you'll probably see on our TikTok channel. So keep your eyes out on social medias, stay in touch there. Often, especially if you've been messaging back and forth with that company and something happens to come up, they're like, oh, this is a friend. This is someone who genuinely likes us. Maybe we'll even get their resume like a little bit more of a boost because of that. So just staying aware, staying alert, and asking and putting it out there into the world. If you're just letting people know, hey, I'm on the hunt, I'm interested, these are the kinds of things I'm looking for, it's a lot easier for people to plug you in. For example, I want to go back and touch on, like you said, it's not every internship leads to a full-time opportunity. I was lucky enough to work with an intern of my own here at Tony's recently. She was so fabulous. And let me tell you, if I could have kept her on, if we had the budget for another headcount, instantly I would have taken her and tried to give her the absolute world at Tony's. But we just weren't in a place for that at that time.
Sure.
But I still stay in touch with her to this day. And throughout her career search, I'm like, oh, I just saw this incredible role open up at Magic Spoon. You would be a great fit. Maybe this is a place for you to apply, just knowing that she was out there and generally what she was looking for. So again, I can't stress enough the importance of other people. And even though it's scary, even though it might feel a little bit discouraging if you don't get something off the bat, there are networks of people that are out there to help you. We all know the job struggle, trust me.
No, that's great. And actually, thinking about your internship, it did turn into something that was the right fit for you and you had the opportunity to stay. But I also feel like there are those moments where people get into an internship or even a job and start to feel like maybe this isn't the right fit for me. So what might you say to someone who feels like this actually is the wrong fit?
I think it's a lot of a gut check. And part of it is like, can I find solutions here to make it the right place? Because sometimes it's about talking to your manager and they're like, oh my gosh, I totally didn't know that you didn't want to be in the digital space and you actually wanted to be more of an e-com person. Let me help you build your resume towards a career there, or let me see what opportunities we have internally there. What kind of responsibilities can I bring in to make you a little happier? And if that's not happening, then it's time to look elsewhere. I think, I joke that it's a little bit uncommon for me to have been somewhere for as long as I have, because I actually see so many of my peers jumping from job to job, and they joke about this with Gen Z these days. But honestly, that can be a really great way to build your career, especially if you're not finding that your company is stepping up and giving you what you need. It's totally a viable career path. No one I know has ever had an issue with, oh, well, I see 4 different places on your resume from the last 4 years. I think it's a little bit outdated to think like, oh, you absolutely have to stay at your first place for 5 years or no one will ever hire you. Like it's so much more flexible than that. There's such a need for talent out there that really you should be looking into and prioritizing the things that are going to make you fulfilled and happy in your career. My dad always told me, you spend at least 8 hours a day, at least 5 days a week in your job. And while we talk about work-life balance, your work and your life are the same thing. That's a lot of hours of your life to be spending unhappy and unfulfilled if you're in a place that's just not right for you.
No, absolutely. I totally agree. And I think that's also just, such a validating thing for people to know that it's okay to learn. It's okay to feel like you're in the wrong place, and you can take steps to try and make it the right place. Like you said, I loved your advice about, approaching someone internally and saying, this isn't really what I thought it was going to be. I'm more interested in X, and seeing where that takes you. Or even if you're just like, I kind of want to, like, I don't know what I want to do with my life. Let me start out here and see how I like it, and then go move on to something else to get a different kind of experience, a different set of skills. So I love the validation. Like, it's okay if you're doing things differently from other people. So thank you for that. Well, Noel, I have loved every moment of our conversation. I feel like we could definitely continue to go on and on, but we are reaching the end of our time together. So I just wanted to ask if you have any final thoughts that you'd like to share with us about anything we talked about today.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for the time. Thank you for everyone who's tuning in, for paying attention, and for listening in. I think I'd just like to open up to, if you have any questions, if you're pursuing a career in marketing, if you want to know more about B Corps and ideas of places to apply, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. You'll find me at Abigail Noel Davison. You can also search for Tony's Chocolonely, and I'll probably come up in there somewhere. But yeah, feel free to stay in touch. Feel free to follow Tony's journey if you're interested in the impact work we do. Totally get involved with search, learn more about B Corps, if especially you're in the business world in one way or another, and looking for careers that you can still make impact while following your degree path. Yeah, and thanks again for your time and attention. Wishing the best of luck to everyone out there that's maybe looking for a career, thinking about switching things up. You've got it, and you're making a special place for yourself in this world.
Oh my goodness. Well, I really hope that folks from our network take the opportunity to follow up with you. I've had so much fun getting to know you and listening to everything that you had to say today. I know that that would be such a valuable connection for people to make. So thanks again for taking time to speak with us, our network, and for just sharing such important and valuable advice for job seekers. This was really an amazing conversation, and I appreciate it.
I couldn't agree more. Thank you so much for having me. So much love to the FRN, and I appreciate having the opportunity.
Thank you.